Nightmare Range. It was a cold and dark night in South Korea. A group of U.S. soldiers were on their way to a place called Nightmare Range, a training site near the border with North Korea. They had heard rumors about the place, how it was haunted by the ghosts of soldiers who died there during the Korean War. Some said they heard screams and gunshots at night, others said they saw figures in the fog, wearing old uniforms and carrying rusty weapons. The U.S. soldiers were not afraid of these stories. They were trained to face any enemy, living or dead. They joked and laughed as they drove their Humvees through the winding roads, passing by rice fields and villages. They reached the range around midnight, and set up their tents and equipment. They planned to start their training at dawn, practicing their shooting and combat skills with their Korean allies. They settled in for the night, but some of them had trouble sleeping. They felt a strange sensation, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. They heard noises outside their tents, footsteps and whispers. They dismissed them as animals or the wind and tried to ignore them. But then, they heard something else. Something that made their blood run cold. A scream. A loud, piercing scream that echoed through the night. They grabbed their guns and ran out of their tents, looking for the source of the scream. They saw one of their comrades, lying on the ground, his face twisted in terror. He was clutching his chest. He looked like he had been shot by a sniper. But there was no sniper, there no wound. Soldiers thought that he is having a mental breakdown. "Medic," Sergeant yelled in the dark of a night. Medic ran out of the tent with his A-bag and ran straight to him. "What's up, dude? Are you okay?" Medic began talking to him to calm him down. He just kept screaming. "Okay, get him out here. We need a medevac time now," Medic yelled. In about 2 hours, a medevac vehicle arrived to pick him up and take him to a hospital in Camp Humphreys. The next day, soldiers were doing a range walkthrough with their Korean counterparts. Old Korean Lieutenant Colonel kept asking about how everyone spent a night, which soldiers found a bit weird. The platoon leader then proceeded to tell him about a soldier having a mental breakdown last night. "You know, Lieutenant, this range is very old, a lot of blood was shed on this land, many people died, Americans, Koreans, Chinese, maybe it is better you go sleep in our barracks for the night instead your tents," Korean officer said. "The spirits don't like us doing disturbing their peace at night, so we stay away." Platoon leader just laughed at what he was saying. "Sir, with all due respect, we are not here to be afraid of spirits, I am more worried about North Koreans right now." Platoon departed back to its assembly area before the nightfall. Platoon sergeant and platoon leader decided that it would be a good idea to do some driver training with night vision goggles. First soldier up was Private Nielsen. He was a tall, skinny guy from Texas. He was paired with a platoon sergeant, Sergeant First Class Borland. Platoon sergeant briefed Nielsen on safety and they departed in the dark of the night with all of the lights off. They came up a little hill and Nielsen hit the brakes so fast that Sergeant Borland hit his face on the dash. "What the hell are you doing, Nielsen?" he yelled. "There are some soldiers there on foot, can't you see them?" Nielsen said. "There is nobody else here training, Nielsen." "Get the hell out of the vehicle, you owe me some push-ups for this," said Borland. As they both get out of the Humvee, Sergeant Borland freezes in terror. "What the?" he said. "Nielsen, do you see them?" he said. "I do," said Nielsen. They were both frozen in shock as they watched an entire battalion cross the road on foot. They looked South Korean, old uniforms were clearly visible through their night vision, some were limping, some were carrying mortars, no one was talking or saying anything. This sight was so eerie Nielsen fainted and collapsed on the ground. Sergeant Borland could not stop looking at them, his heart was about to jump out of his chest, he was trying to reach for a radio but he was paralyzed by fear. All of a sudden one of the ghost soldiers came up to Borland and said something in Hongbu. Borland fainted as well. They both woken up by platoon leader. Lieutenant Johnson right before sunrise. Sergeant Borland, you scared the crap out of me. I thought I can trust to run a simple driver training exercise. Instead, you guys decide to take a nap on the middle of the road. Have you lost your mind? LT was super aggravated at them both. Sir, we saw something last night. There was like a whole battalion crossing on the front of us. Sergeant Borland, you will grab Nielsen and will proceed to see the medic. I can't afford to lose my platoon sergeant right before the live fire, LT said. To his luck, medic screened both of them and found nothing physically wrong with soldiers, so they both went back to work right away. Everyone was laughing and joking about what happened to them, calling them sleepy sappers and other not-so-appropriate names. Platoon departed to go to a live fire area where they had to sleep on the ground. When they arrived, they were greeted by an old Korean man who said he was a range safety officer. He briefed the platoon on what they can and can't do while spending the night at the live fire area. And then he warned soldier not to wander around, and if they see something weird to close their eyes and not to interact with whatever they see. Everyone laughed thinking it was a joke, but Korean man's face did not change. Seems like he had to do this before. I do not care if you believe in ghosts or not, they are real here, and they can hurt you if you aren't careful, he said. Platoon bedded down for the night. Right next to where they slept, there was a Korean artillery reloading vehicle that Koreans turned into mobile command post. Lieutenant Johnson decided to sleep there because there was a camo net dropped over it in case it was going to rain. He got in his sleeping bag and grabbed his phone to text his girlfriend when he heard a load bang coming from inside the vehicle. What the? He said to himself. Hey, who is in there? You aren't scaring anybody, he yelled out. There was silence. From the distance he saw a bunch of lights. He jumped out of his sleeping bag thinking that there was somebody coming towards them, maybe battalion commander, he thought. He put on his pants and quickly ran to see who was coming. He stopped himself in the state of shock. He was looking at the entire convoy passing through live fire area where the range safety officer said not to go. Lieutenant ran to his Humvee and tried radio back to range control to see what the hell is going on. Range control informed him that there is nobody else there except him and his platoon, and that he needs to just get some sleep. As LT was looking at the convoy more, he began to notice that the vehicle he was looking at were not anything that is being used anymore. They were old Sherman tanks and deuce-and-a-half trucks that were around in 1950s. LT got terrified. He ran back to his sleeping bag. He got in and closed his eyes. It took him a long time to go to sleep, but he eventually did. He woke up very late. His platoon was already awake and moving around getting their gear on and checking their equipment for a live fire rehearsal. As soon as LT got up, he went to talk to a Korean officer that was there to oversee the training. Hey sir, I think I will take that offer on the barracks. A Special Forces soldier with 5th Special Forces Group out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I'm not going to mention my battalion or an ODA, Operational Detachment Alpha. For those of you who don't know, it's a group of 12 soldiers who supposed to insert themselves into a hostile country and begin propping up resistance forces against whoever we are supposed to be fighting with. I just arrived to my ODA right before deployment to Afghanistan. My company was supposed to cover a remote area of Kunar Province. Kunar Province is a very mountainous province covered by forests. It is very high above sea level, causing many people not used to it pass out that are not used to this altitude. In 2015, I went on my first 6-month tour to Kunar Province. The deployment to Kunar Province was not supposed to be an easy one. Most of the guys who's been to Kunar Province always talked about how difficult it was to operate in those mountains. At the beginning of our deployment, we were in Bagram Air Base. For about 2 weeks we did a whole lot of nothing, except working out, receiving some briefings and classes, and going to the range to maintain our marksmanship skills. After 2 weeks we were finally able to go to Kunar for the first time. We were linking up with Afghan Commando unit. It was best trained and equipped Afghan unit. We were replacing another OTA station at Afghan Commando base. We didn't get to talk to them too much as they left almost immediately as we arrived. We were going out on missions with Afghan Commandos for about first 3 months. Most of it was night raids, reconnaissance, and intelligence gathering. Nothing out of ordinary has happened. Couple of firefights, couple of eyed strikes, but that's all the stuff we were used to. About halfway into our deployment, the task force ordered us to clear a very remote village in Kunar province. According to our J2 coalition or Afghan forces had never been there. I will not disclose name of this village, but it was right on the border with Pakistan. We began planning the mission. We identified all of the requirements requested: needed air support and airlift. We then were briefing our Afghan counterparts. We were going to take a platoon of Afghan commando with us if shit hits the fan. There's only 12 of us in an OTA, and having a platoon of highly trained Afghan commandos with us, it's always a great bonus. When we were briefing our Afghan counterparts on the upcoming mission, a few soldiers from commando platoon began to make faces, like we didn't know what the hell we were doing for where we were going. I asked the commando, "Put you later, why are they nodding in such a negative way?" The platoon leader in broken English explained to me that both of those soldiers are from Kunar province, and there's some legend attached to the area where we were going. Something has to do with jinns and evil spirits. What a fucking waste of time, I thought. Spirits, jinns. We got our gear on and moved to the airfield, where Afghan counterparts arrived shortly after. We were waiting for 2 Chinook CH-47 helicopters to pick us up. Chinooks had flew in, landed on the airfield. We quickly made our way inside the Chinook, and our team captain ensured that Afghans were accounted for and good to go. We took off in the middle of the night with an intent to hit the objective early in the morning. That's not how we usually operated, but due to altitude and distance from the nearest airfield to the objective, we could only use MQ-9s for air support. AC-130s would not do well in this environment. After about an hour and a half of a flight, Chinooks landed on the side of a mountain. They were still hovering as the pilots dropped the ramp to let us dismount. We successfully egressed both aircrafts and begun pulling security. My watch showed at 4:00. We had about an hour and a half before the sunrise. That's the time we would use to set ourselves up for a successful mission. We kept slowly moving through the night and were reached outskirt of this village at about 5:25. Sun begun to rise. We decided to split our OTA into 4 elements. 2 of the elements with occupy and S&O positions, also known as surveillance and observation position. Our second element with occupy a support by fire position with Afghan weapons squad. And other 2 elements would accompany Afghan commandos as they were entering the village. Our combat controller was at the S&O position with me. We were close enough to see for Afghan squads along with our guys answering the village. We were able to maintain pretty good radio comms, and everything was going well. Team captain went with an assault element. He was very active on the radio, updating everybody else on how things are going. Village was not a very big settlement, maybe 20 to 25 huts, with a little bazaar, but as we were watching, we did not see a single civilian or a hostile in that area. Village was quickly cleared, and team captain ordered our OTA to consolidate in one of the houses. We quickly made our way down and set up the security around an old compound. If you've been to Afghanistan, you would know what I'm talking about. As we were occupying a compound, a really thick mist begun rolling on us. We were utterly confused by that, as day was very sunny with clear skies. As mist rolled and things became dark and hard to see, visibility dropped to maybe 10 to 15 meters. Our CCT was trying to get a hold SWO to see what's going on and what weather forecast are they going to fuck up this time. But he couldn't get a hold of them. All of the comps seemed to be down. Our emergency cell phones didn't have a signal. Our PRC-117 Fox was unable to acquire satellite. Our Iridium phones wouldn't work. I've been to many missions in very remote areas, but never had something like that happen to me. It was very bizarre. Our Afghan counterparts begun freaking out. Some of them started crying, and some of them were visibly irritated, to say scared. This is the first time when I saw Afghan commandos completely drop security posture and abandon their posts. This was very out of character for them. But this was something real. One of the Afghan soldiers kept saying spirits and Pashto. Something about us disturbing them. Our team captain wanted to hear none of that. He kept telling us to try to get a hold of the JOC Joint Operations Center for those of you not in the military. Our team captain wanted to report that objective was cleared and person we were looking for, codename Jackhammer, was not in the village and the village was completely empty. We tried our comms for about 6 hours, before our team captain decided to grab a sat phone and couple of Afghan commandos along with team chief, and try to make it up on top of the mountain where he thought he was going to get some service. As we sat there and time was passing by, we noticed that sun was not going down. Even the color of the sun was a little bit different. It was almost like it was red. Mist also didn't go anywhere, and the whole thing was extremely creepy. Although we couldn't get a hold of the JOC, we could still talk to each other. Our team sergeant was constantly checking in with the team captain as they were making their way up the mountain. All of a sudden we heard gunshots and screaming. Oh shit, we thought Taliban had finally showed up. 4 Green Berets and squad of Afghan commandos rushed to the area where they heard the gunfire coming from. Myself included, we made our way to where we thought we heard the gunfire to discover our team captain just standing there surrounded by 3 bodies. What the fuck, we thought. What happened, I asked him. He didn't respond and he had a very evil grin on his face. He was smiling while looking at me like when the dude get possessed by demon in the movies. This was the kind of smile I was seeing on his face. I told him, hey sir, I would put your weapon down and step away from it. He didn't even react. He started to raise his weapon, as I started screaming at him to put it down. He was still not listening. I had my M4 pointing it at him, and I squeezed the trigger, but I didn't shoot at him, I shot at his feet. He just stopped and looked down at where bullet landed. He didn't even flinch. He begun to talk, but it was not English. He wasn't even Pashto. It was something else I never heard before, some dead language or something. How in the fuck would he know something like that? The guy is an idiot. I talked to myself. Afghan commandos dropped their weapons and ran when he started talking whatever language he was talking. Team sergeant was trying to talk to the captain to calm him down and make him put down the weapon. Captain was just staring at him. In a split second, captain raised his pistol and shot team sergeant in the face several times, dropped dead. Remaining Green Berets fired at the captain. He collapsed as he was dying. They called me. He said, you need to get out of here. And then he let go of his last breath. We were all in shock. 3 of our cameras just perished in a split second. The most senior person was Sergeant First Class Johnson. He gathered us in the compound after we picked up bodies of commandos and our guys. Right before he was going to brief us on what he wants to do, Afghan command up with you later walked in. There was worry on his face, if not terror. He spoke a pretty good English, and he begun talking to us. He said, we need to get out of here, but it's not that easy. You can't just walk out from this village. We asked him, what do you mean? Why can't we just walk to the first Afghan border guard outpost we see? The platoon leader told us that he didn't know how to explain it, but if we want to try and walk away, we are more welcome to do so. But whatever happened to our team captain might end up happening to us as well. Sergeant First Class Johnson to grab 2 more Green Berets with them and decided to make his way out. He said that once he gets to the high ground and he can get a hold of the JOC, he'll pull everybody else up so we can get out of here. He began walking. The sun was still the red and creepy, the mist was still there, and it seemed to be getting even thicker. We heard more gunshots. Oh fuck, we thought, it's happening again. We ran to the location of gunshots with our weapons up, already know what to expect. Sure, Johnson was standing there surrounded by 2 bodies of the Green Berets that he took with them. He had the same grin on his face as a captain did before he died. My body staff Sergeant Rivera did not wait or try to talk to him. He simply shot him right in the head. Sergeant First Class Johnson collapsed. There was only 6 of us left now, plus the Afghans. I decided to talk to 2 soldiers that said they were from Kunar province, and were somewhat familiar with this place. As I approached them, I noticed how calm they were compared to everybody else. I asked her interpreter Abdul to translate. I asked him if they have experienced anything like this before. One of them said yes, I then asked them how did they get out of there. Looked me in the eyes and said Inshallah. Abdul translated it as something like this is the place where God tests man, if they have a good heart and soul God willing they will make it out. And if not they will not and they will die here and their soul will forever be trapped in this village. What the fuck I thought? We were all pretty tired and wanted to take a nap, while 3 of us sleep 3 of us guard the compound. I took my nap. I had an absolutely horrible nightmare. I don't even remember what it was about, but all I remember is that I did not want to go back to sleep. When we woke up in the morning or whatever it was, we noticed that mist was gone and sun became normal Gila orange a color. Our CCT was finally able to get a hold of the jock and requested immediate extraction. Multiple helicopters flew in to pick us up, including those that perish. As we were flying out, I was looking at the village and thinking how souls of all those that died here will never leave this village and how horrifying it was. I felt blessed that I made it out. Special Operations Task Force wrote this off as an engagement with Taliban, and those who died by enemy fire. They simply brushed the whole thing under the rug. I will never forget this, and to this day I have nightmares about that village, where I see Team Captain grinning at me. I was a Marine stationed in 29 Palms 2nd Battalion 7th Marines. One day during a 4-day weekend, after a long field training, me and my buddies decided to go to Las Vegas. But we had to take a shortcut through Amboy to get to I-40. We began driving down the deserted road when night fell, when we saw a group of people standing in the middle of the road. They were all dressed in black robes and had their faces covered with masks. We tried to swerve around them, but they wouldn't move. We swerved to the shoulder of the road, but my Honda Civic got stuck and couldn't move because we went downhill, and climbing up through gravel in a front-wheel drive car proved impossible. I came to a complete stop. All of us were terrified by what's going on. My buddy Martin began to talk after initial shock of the swerving of the road. "What are they doing?" he asked. "I have no idea, but it looks like they are coming towards us," I said as I watched a group of people approaching the car. They came up to the car and started banging on the car windows and doors, trying to break in. We were terrified and didn't know what to do. We tried to drive away, but our car wouldn't move. The cult members started chanting and circling around us. Jake, my other buddy, said, "What's up with these people? Who are they?" I have no idea. Suddenly I remembered that I had a K-bar knife in my glove compartment. I immediately went down to get it out. Meanwhile, people began to shake the car. One of them appeared out of nowhere with a sledgehammer. Martin saw him walking towards us, and he yelled, "He's got a sledgehammer." I then put the car in reverse and hit the gas, running over one of them. I kept driving down until the desert floor was somewhat flat. People then began to run towards us, screaming something very loud that we couldn't hear. I turned the car towards the road and floored it. We finally got on the hardball road and I floored my car, going about 120 miles per hour. We were no longer going to Las Vegas. We went straight to nearest police station in Barstow, California. We told the officer everything. He calmly took our police report and stepped out. He came back with what looked like his supervisor, who then asked us why we were driving there so late. We told a police officer that we were just going to Las Vegas for a weekend and we had no intentions of getting in trouble. He proceeded to tell us about how dangerous it is to drive through that road at night. He told us that they periodically discover abandoned vehicles on that road and they are never able to find the driver. He said that he will contact San Bernardino Sheriff's Department and pass the report to them so they can go check it out. But he warned us not to take that road at night ever again. We returned to 29 Palms early next morning, pulled my squad leader and explained him what happened. Despite all of the seriousness of situation, he laughed at all of us. He said that he does not believe us and that he thinks that we were driving drunk made this whole thing up. When we all returned to work on Tuesday, our fellow Marines were making fun of us, calling us abductees and cold boys. One of the lance corporals was asking if we were abducted and experimented on by aliens. He was joking, of course, but Jake, Martin, and I felt horrible as nobody believed us. About 2 months later, a Marine from 29 Palms to go to Vegas at night, her car was discovered abandoned on the side of the road. She was never found or heard from again. Everybody wrote it off as AWOL, but I think I know what happened to her. Only if people would listen to our story, maybe they would take these threats more seriously. As for me, I will never forget that night on that lonely desert road. This next story was sent to me by an MP stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. My whole life I wanted to join the military. When I turned 18, I immediately went to see Army recruiter. My dad was in the Army, so I thought I should continue on a family tradition. I went to basic training and ate at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. If you never heard of this place, good for you. People that are stationed there call it Fort Lost in the Woods, as it's surrounded by vast Missouri wilderness, and a lot of times basic trainees get lost in the forest while doing land navigation training. Let's just say I was happy to get out of there and go to my first duty station. I got assigned an MP battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas. There's nothing exciting about Fort Riley, Kansas. But I go where Army needs me. My job was simple: drive around and follow the checklist. It included things like checking ammo holding area gates, drive around barracks to make sure nobody is being drunk and belligerent. All was well at first. I liked the job and the people I worked with. I was even thinking about re-enlisting for another 4 years. But then something happened. One night I had to patrol an area near where everybody trains. I went and got my coffee at the shop hut, did all my radio checks, and big on driving. I've got to a place called Four Corners. That's where training areas started. I began driving into a training area to make sure there was no civilian traffic there, when I noticed a figure walking down the road. At first I thought it was a random soldier returning from a long run. But then I thought to myself, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, who would be running right now? PT starts at 6:30. I decided to check it out. I turned on my lights and begun driving up towards him. As I got closer to him, I realized that it was not a soldier. He was dressed in old fatigues, something out of Civil War. Only thing I could tell was that he had a blue jacket and a blue cap. He also had a rifle, from what I can tell. I immediately stopped my car. I jumped out and I yelled at, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He did not respond. He just kept walking. I was terrified, but for some reason I still wanted to go after him. He was about 15 feet from me. When he turned around and looked at me, my heart nearly dropped to the ground. I felt a cold sensation around down my entire body. When he looked at me, I saw that his eyes were completely white, that his face was so pale that it nearly reflected off my flashlight. I've begun stepping back, shocked by what I'm seeing. He stood there for a second looking straight in my eyes, and then he turned and continued walking. As he was walking deeper in the dark, I saw his figure slowly dissipate into thin air. I ran back to my car and radio back to MP station, but I didn't quite know what to say. Instead, I just pretended that I was doing a radio check. I sped back to Fort Riley cantonment area and sat on the PX parking lot for about 2 hours thinking about what happened. I will never forget this night. I could never tell anybody about it. I didn't want to be called crazy, so I just kept quiet. About a year later, a buddy of mine also saw a strange figure. This time he was walking by Commanding General's house as my buddy was patrolling the housing area. When he shared his experience, everybody just begun laughing, everybody except an old E7 who was stationed in Fort Riley for 10 years. He approached me and my buddy and begun telling us that he saw him too. He said he looked it up and it was an old soldier who committed suicide back in 19th century. Legend has it, as he returned from an expedition he found out that his wife left him, he committed a suicide and he's been walking streets of Fort Riley ever since. This next story was sent to me by an airman stationed in Thule Air Force Base. When I joined the Air Force, I had an idyllic picture of me being stationed somewhere sunny and warm, maybe Florida or California. I could see myself taking long strolls on the beach after work. Maybe picking up surfing as a hobby, getting into scuba diving, but that's not what United States Air Force had in for me. Being security forces in the Air Force means you can get stationed practically anywhere in the world. I got very unlucky. My first duty station was Thule Air Force Base. For those of you who don't know, Thule Air Force Base is located in Greenland. It is the most northern U.S. military installation in the world, most of the year eventually frozen. There's absolutely nothing to do other than staring into the sky or enjoying a beautiful landscape of Greenland. Food was horrible, job was boring. I spend most of my days either guarding the gate or driving a road between the base and location of the radar. One night my partner and I were tasked with patrolling a lonely stretch of a road between Tulare Air Force Base and the radar. Gigantic radar was always manned 24/7 and always had bus go between there and the barracks for everybody lift. Shuttle would go there and back twice a day, once in the morning to pick up night shift guys and drop off day shift guys, same thing at night, pick up day shift guys and drop off the night shift guys. We were driving an Arctic version of F-350, the thing was diesel and super loud. We departed Security Forces Station at midnight, driving slowly along the road. Darkness of the night was a bit eerie, but lights are still. Air Force Base gave us a warm feeling that there's a civilization nearby in case something happens. But further we got away from the base, darker it got, finally driving in pitch black darkness. My buddy had to go to the bathroom. I stopped the truck and let him out. He left his weapon, an M4 carbine, sitting in the vehicle. I was just listening to the radio, trying to stay awake. Then suddenly I noticed the lights in the distance. At first I thought the shuttle was making an unscheduled run, but after looking at the lights, I realized that they were not bus headlights, they were something else moving erratically up and down. When finally I saw the lights take off up to the sky, I jumped. It was trying to get my buddy's attention. He also saw it. We'd both begun to freak out. My buddy grabbed his weapon, quickly put on his helmet and pulled out his night vision goggles. He was trying to look through his night vision goggles to see what it was when the lights landed on the ground again. "Dude, what the hell are those things?" he said. "Look at how they move. They are like spheres or something." As he was talking, spheres were getting closer and closer, until they were right over us. We both were standing right next to the truck looking up when bright light shined in our faces. I don't remember what happened next. All I remember is waking up at the clinic, with a nurse standing over me. I've never seen before. We're standing behind her. Both had 511 clothes on. "Oh, thank God you're awake," she said. There were two people that I've never seen before. Were standing behind her. Both had 511 clothes on and white earpieces in their ears. "Hey, we need to talk to you about what happened last night," they said. "Okay, sure," I said. I proceeded to explain what me and my buddy had seen. Both of the men, at no point of me talking, had changed expression on their faces. It's like they heard it before. One of them lent me a piece of paper stating that this is a non-disclosure agreement that I have to sign regarding this accident. Yes, they called it an accident. What was afraid to ask any questions about what happened, as both of the men gave me very uneasy feeling. I don't know what that was. It was either some government experiment or aliens. Whatever it was, I will never forget what happened that night on that cold, dark road in Greenland. If you're enjoying the content of this channel, please hit subscribe and like buttons. My channel is new and any help would be appreciated. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but it will cost you missing some awesome content as we immerse ourselves into dark side of military service. Thank you. I was an airman stationed in a place most you call Area 51. No one who works here actually calls it that. We call it Dreamland or the lake. Technically, Area 51 is part of Edwards Air Force Base. If you think working here is cool, you are dead wrong. It's not. It's awful. This place is the worst place I ever been to throughout my career, and I've been on many deployments. But so far being here beats all of it put together. The lake gets super hot in the summer and cold in the winter. There is nothing to do here except going to dining facility and a small morale facility. Most of the personnel here are civilians, scientists and engineers working on something that even the commander of base doesn't know about. Most of the time I man the gate, or when it's my turn I patrol the perimeter of the base. Some people call us camo dudes. Not sure why this nickname stuck, but whatever, it doesn't bother me any. Occasionally I get to guard an entrance to an underground facility. That place is super weird and I don't even want to know what's inside of it. I'm also a member of Special Response Team for base security. There is another Special Response Team here, some civilian contractors, mostly former Delta and SEAL Team 6 dudes. Our team occasionally trains with them for any kind of emergency. If there is an emergency inside the underground facility, we are not allowed to respond to it, only them. We just sit back and watch them. It happened a few times while I was manning entry control point to it. I saw them rushing in with some strange-looking weapons, equipped with gas masks and wearing MOP Level 4 chemical suit. I don't ask a lot of questions. I just work here. This fateful day I was manning entry control point to the underground facility when base alarm system went off. It happened before, so I didn't think anything of it. I just radioed to Base Operations Center to see if there is a lockdown so I can grab my rifle and not let anyone in or out. The operations NCO responded to me, but his response didn't make any sense. He was saying something about Special Response Team activation and that I need to leave my post and immediately report to Security Operations Center and grab my tactical gear. Oh shit, I thought, probably another bullshit drill. I jumped in my truck and started driving back to base. It was about 15-minute drive. As I was driving I spotted a convoy of Humvees speeding towards another underground facility that I have never guarded before. I won't say its name, but I think people that are into Area 51 conspiracies would know what I'm talking about. Something serious was happening. When I reported to SOC, about 15 of us were quickly putting on our tactical gear. There was no talking. The NCO in charge of us kept telling us to hurry the fuck up and get outside if we were ready. I quickly put on my body armor and helmet and I ran out towards our motor pool. I jumped in my assigned Humvee and waited for rest of my team. They all were finally running up. We mounted the vehicles and began driving. We were met by a truck belonging to other team's liaison. I would assume they would lead us to where we need to go. Clearly they needed some help. We drove up to an underground facility and stopped right at the gate. Outside of the entrance, which was a gigantic steel door, were standing the Special Response Team wearing hazmat suits. It looked like they were scrambling. Some of them began entering the facility. Their weapons were at high ready, like there is threat right inside of the facility. The NCO in charge of our team told us to stand by as he going row talk to them to see what they need from us. From afar it looked like the guy he was talking to looked overwhelmed and distressed. He was making helpless gestures with his hand like things got out of control and he didn't know what to do about it. The NCO ran back to us and told us that we were going in. Quick rules of engagement: if it's not human, shoot it. Simple as that. We were all confused by what he was saying. What the fuck do you mean if it's not human? Anyway, we were going in to clear part of the facility. We ran to the entrance. The NCO told us to mount our night vision goggles. We entered the facility but the lights were still on. I had never actually been inside on these. It was immense inside. There were aircraft-looking things sitting there. Some of them didn't even look like we made them. We didn't really have time to look at everything in there. We quickly ran through open bay area and entered what looked like a lab of some kind. It was nothing fancy but had some simulation equipment inside. It was all clear with an exception of a scared shitless civilian worker in the corner. He was sitting there repeating some phrase that I couldn't hear. We kept moving. We entered a large hallway, and that's when we heard gunshots up ahead of us at the end of the hallway. We ducked down and tried to see what the hell was happening. We could hear loud agonizing screams from down the hallway. We decided to push forward and assist in whatever was happening. We quickly ran down and saw 5 bodies scattered all over the place, splashes of blood and random limbs laying around everywhere. What the fuck? I thought to myself, I didn't sign for this shot, what could have done this? As we were trying to see if anybody was alive, we heard a loud scream coming from dark area that looked like some kind of office space. We moved forward to see what it was. At first we thought it was one of the civilians that might need our help, but after we heard it the second time, we realized it was not human. We threw on our night vision goggles and moved in, trying to be as careful and vigilant as possible while maintaining some kind of organization. We entered the cubicle area and were slowly clearing the area. There were more bodies of civilians that we found randomly laying around the area. All of a sudden, the lead guy gave a hand signal for halt. What the fuck is that? His voice was breaking. He began firing at something that we couldn't see, but once he took a knee I saw it too. It was some animal-looking thing that kept hopping and jumping off the walls so quickly that I couldn't get my sight on it. I let off a few shots but didn't even come close. That thing was lightning fast. I had a stun grenade on me that I decided to throw in a general direction of where that thing was. I threw one, and right after I threw another, I got up to see if it had any effect on it, and I let off a few more shots. Immediately I heard a scream. It was so loud and piercing that it penetrated out headphones that were supposed to mute everything around us. I think I wounded it. I threw a few more Stum grenades, and this time the whole team lined up and opened up on this thing. The thing ran into a separate office. From looks of it, it was the manager's office. We moved towards it. My buddy had a frag grenade on him, the only one that had an actual combat grenade. He decided to finish it off with it. He threw a frag grenade perfectly in the doorway and ducked down. We heard a loud boom, and as we got up we opened fire, turning entire office into Swiss cheese. It got to the point where we were about to run out of ammo. I think we got it. Our NCO radioed back to someone. We are on the way, the voice on the radio responds to him. After about 15 minutes the civilian dudes arrived. They were wearing hazmat suits. They slowly approached an area where we thought we killed that thing. One of them threw an electrical shock net on something that we figured was that thing. He turned on the electrical shocker and the thing screamed out again. Oh my god, it was so fucking loud I almost lost my hearing. They, however, were completely unfazed by the scream. Behind us there was another group of them coming up. Good job guys, you can leave now, we got it, one of them said. I hope the fuck you got it, I thought to myself, I don't ever want to do this again. We left the underground facility and were told to go to the small auditorium for a debrief. As we entered we noticed that there was a lot more presence now. Medevac helicopters landing and taking off. Bunch of Humvees and MRAPs blocking the road. But they weren't service members from what I could tell. They were all wearing masks and wearing a black uniform with no unit identification for some reason. We hopped back into our Humvees and began driving back to base. We went straight into an auditorium where some bald civilian dude was already waiting for us with stack of papers. He explained that he was with Department of Defense, and we need to sign non-disclosure agreements about what happened just now. Damn, that was fast, I thought. I wish these guys were just as fast to eliminate that fucking thing as they were with NDAs. We signed the agreement. What else were we going to do? Later that week we had an award ceremony where some general from Joint Special Operations Command awarded all of us with a high-level award. It was funny because award did not specify what we did in the citation. Even fucking awards from this place were classified. Some of us were given a 4-day pass to hit Las Vegas. I took the opportunity and jumped on a plane to Las Vegas. I spent next 4 days trying to cope with what happened that day. I still can't believe what I saw. We were all voluntold to go see a therapist after commission about 4-day pass. But what the fuck was I going to tell him? That I saw an alien or mutant and I shot it? Wow, that's a fucking headline for Las Vegas, son. Anyway, I returned to the lake and went back to my duty. Nothing was out of ordinary, the aftermath of what happened was still ongoing, but helicopter landings and takeoffs finally slowed down, and all of the black uniformed dudes seemed to be gone. No one was ever able to talk about what happened. I don't even think all of the people at Grum Lake knew about it. They probably just went about their day. I kept having dreams about what happened, and about 2 months later I began to hear voices in my head. At first they didn't make any sense, but more I was able to focus on them, more I could understand them. It was a female voice telling me to let her out and help her. It was driving me crazy as they would just randomly start pooping up in my head. I approached a base clinic about it and was immediately sent to a specialist. But it was not a doctor, I don't even think he was a medical professional. He just kept asking me if I at any point of time was able to look that thing in the eye. I told him no. It was too dark for me to even see its head. He nodded and told me that I should probably be reassigned somewhere else. I left that hellhole shortly after, maybe 3 to 4 days. I was taken back to Edwards Air Force Base where I was technically stationed. The voices in my head were finally gone, and I am happy to say that I am finally over that horrible experience. I'm soon going to be put of Air Force. I'm going to join a police department once I get out. Don't ask me which one, whichever one that doesn't deal with fucking aliens, I guess.